So good afternoon, everyone. I am so glad you're with us. So sorry for the complication just a few minutes ago. We love and hate technology, right, folks? We've all had those experiences. So welcome. I'm so glad that you are here with us here at the Signatories webinar. We do these once a month, and it is really our goal here to equip you as ministry leaders in your development work and to partner with you in major donor conversations. So what I seek to do is really look for some subject matter experts out there in the field, oftentimes doing this work day in and day out, and bringing that to you, and really spoon feeding some of their expertise to us and help us really up our development game and give us some great tools and insights. So I'm super excited about today's guest. But I want to just remind you, those of you who may be new to the conversation or new to the Signatory, about some of the ways that we can engage with you. So beyond today's webinar, remember to go view our website where we have tools and resources available for you. We have a catalog of past webinars. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Certainly after today, you're going to want to connect with Jeremy on LinkedIn. But then also pass this webinar on to others. I know that you have connections with other nonprofit leaders, perhaps those within your organization. Please share this information. We want to hold this very open-handed to help equip development leaders to get more resources into the kingdom and into our nonprofit sector to help solve many of the problems that our world is facing and that you are solving. So we want to equip you. Now today, I really strive to make these webinars a conversation, not just a presentation. So certainly as we are going about today's webinar, if you have a question, please go to that Q&A tab at the bottom. I know at least several of you know where that toolbar is because you've already sent me a message today to let me know that things are going well technically. So certainly as you have questions, engage with me over that Q&A tab, and I will try to weave those into the conversation with Jeremy as we are going. So we will also then have some time at the end that I think Jeremy has kind of allotted for some questions. Okay, so I am super excited about Jeremy being with us today. This topic is one I know I was working through as a development officer. I know many of you are in your current space, and that is, how do we get donors online? How do we really leverage that tool? And oftentimes, I know in today's world, they start following us on social media, right? But how do we turn a follower or a like into someone who's really engaged in our organization? Jeremy is an expert in this area, and he is going to really bring some insights and some great tools to you. He is the senior director, of marketing for Food for the Hungry, and he manages this team of marketing and direct mail and digital fundraising, and he is really just a great voice to this. And I think also what's great about Jeremy is he's not settling in to what he knows, but he's continuing to move forward and really stay on the cutting edge of what's happening. So he blogs at nonprofitdonor.com. He has a podcast. He produces more content on LinkedIn than I think is humanly possible. So I'm not really sure how he produces all of that, but he is a great resource in this space. And so it really is my great pleasure to welcome Jeremy to the podcast. Thanks so much for being with us, Jeremy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kristen. I really appreciate the introduction. She asked me once to share my secrets with her about how I produce so much content. And of course, I refuse to. So no, seriously though, my goal is I hope to help other nonprofit leaders like you to raise more money to help more people. And so whatever I can do to help give back and teach, I really, I've made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot of things over the last decade or so in my nonprofit career, and so my hope is to take some of those lessons so that you don't have to repeat the same mistakes that I made, and that organizations like mine that have good size can spend some money, test some things, find what works best, and then share that information out with you. So really glad to be here.
Great. Thank you.
We're going to get started. We talked about in that great introduction that we're going to be spoon feeding here. And sometimes I look at this material and think that it's more of like a fire hose, but I'm definitely going to spoon feed the material. So if you have questions along the way, please ask. We'd be glad to have them. We'll have some time at the end for some questions. But I'll definitely focus the material around what we're going to learn today for organizations of all sizes. So if you're an organization of a single person managing this, or if you have a team, we really want to break these concepts down in a way that you can do this. And I know that you can do this because I was a team of one when I joined Food for the Hungry. And so it is possible to do what we're talking about and be a team of one and pull it off. Today, we're going to talk through, I manage both the direct mail side, telemarketing, and the web side, the digital side of what we do at Feed for the Hungry. And so I get to see both sides of acquisition. I get to see kind of the traditional direct mail acquisition, which is still working great if you're not doing it, depending on the organization, but I highly recommend getting a direct mail acquisition program. It still works, and digital acquisition works. And so we're going to talk through today the digital acquisition side. And a question that a lot of people have had on their mind. I know in my time, last 7 years at Food for the Hungry, a question that's been asked often is, what is this investment into social media? What is the payoff? Because you're not always going to see those donations off of a social media post. And so, you're probably investing more into social media from an organic standpoint than you're getting out. And so how can we convert those followers, those likes, into people that actually give to our organization? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to walk through a formula that I've created, which is ABCD, make it easy for us to remember, and walk through that formula on how do we identify audiences, how do we create what I call a bribe or a lead generation asset, how do we capture that lead, and then how do we develop them into a donor. So we do have a lot of information today that we're going to walk through. But as I mentioned, if you do have questions along the way, please stop us, ask those questions. We'll be glad to answer those questions as we get going here. So a couple of assumptions. One assumption that we're making is that you are here to learn about how to create this lead generation program, how to turn those followers into donors. I do have an assumption that you have some basic social media or technical experience. If you don't, then I'll make an assumption that you can have access to somebody that does, or can find somebody that does, and that your organization does have a budget for lead acquisition. This isn't free. So that's one of the things that in social media that you'll learn is, it's free to post organically, but to actually reach the audience, to find new donors, it isn't going to be free. And so that leads into some of the myths of digital, which is acquiring donors isn't free. So that is a myth of digital marketing. There's a myth that digital is your solution to all your awareness and acquisition problems. For us at FH, our direct mail acquisition program is actually less expensive than our digital acquisition program. And so we're able to acquire donors through direct mail cheaper than we are through digital. And so it is not, some organizations that's flipped. And so it doesn't have to be that way at your organization, but for us, that's the case. And so it is not a magic cure that you're going to be able to bring in, these very, very, very inexpensive donors. It still does cost money to acquire them. And again, as I mentioned, I wouldn't replace direct mail with digital entirely. Direct mail still does have its place. You're not going to find instant millennial success. And so many of the audiences that we target with our digital marketing, they may be a bit younger than our direct mail audience, but our average direct mail donor is in their 70s. And so a bit younger doesn't mean that much. It could be a generation younger and you're still in our 40s. So you are still going to, there is a struggle. If your aim is to build up a millennial donor program, there is still a struggle in conversion there that not all of us have figured out. And then there is a myth that only your millennial staff understand digital. It's not the case. There's a lot of people 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s that understand digital and are doing great things in this space. So as I mentioned, this is the formula that we're going to go through for developing new donors in the digital space. So first, we need to identify and build an audience. Second, you need to have a bribe. A bribe is a lead generation asset. This is a tool, and we're going to go through some examples of those. This is a tool that you'll use for people to exchange their email address with you, and then we're going to build a welcome series and an engagement series of emails in order to convert them into donors. So then you're going to capture, once you have this lead generation asset, this bribe, you're going to capture that email address, and then we're going to develop these folks that have joined your email list into becoming new donors. So this is the ABCD formula for turning digital followers into donors. So as I mentioned, when we walk through this formula, what we're going to do first is we're going to identify the audience. We're going to create this irresistible lead magnet. We're going to learn how to acquire these leads, create some nurturing email series, get the donor, and then of course, we always want to thank our donor. That's the breakdown of that ABCD formula. So really at the end of the day, several years ago, so 7, 8 years ago, there was a big push to build these very large audiences in social media. Most organizations that were around then that were building audiences, the focus was on gaining likes on Facebook, followers on Twitter, and there was not a ton of focus on building the right kind of audience. Now, as you may have seen over the last couple of years, different algorithms been built at Facebook and on Instagram and now on Twitter, where you're not reaching your entire audience. And so if you've built 1 million followers over the last several years, you're probably not reaching very much of that audience anymore without some paid reach. And so it isn't just a matter of identifying the largest audience that you can reach, but it's really focused on the niche of identifying the right people to reach so that your conversion is higher. So you might end up, when you spend money, you might end up reaching a very small audience compared to what we might have done just a few years ago. But in doing that, you have a much higher opportunity to convert people that are more likely to become your donors. And so today we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about your existing and new audiences. We're going to talk about how do you analyze your audience, especially on Facebook, which is a tool that we're going to focus some of our conversation today on. A lot of the principles that we're learning today apply to other channels. And when we say Facebook, we really mean Facebook and Instagram. They're the same ad platform. Facebook owns Instagram. Instagram is a highly engaging platform with a good donor audience. So my recommendation is as we move forward and we talk through some of these concepts, that you're really applying it to Facebook and Instagram. Some of the other social networks out there, Twitter, LinkedIn, the advertising for them is not as effective. It's not as cost effective. It doesn't reach necessarily the right audiences or the right people. So it's a bit more of an effort and an investment in those. A lot of these principles apply also to Google and with AdWords and Bing with their ad network. You can apply a lot of these same principles. The targeting with them is different than it is with Facebook. And so today we're going to really focus on how do we convert these Facebook likes and these donor audiences and people who may not like you yet into becoming donors. And so we're going to talk through building custom audiences and look-like audiences and what does that mean? What is a custom audience and what does a look-like audience? And then how do you find similar audiences to the ones that you already have? So how do you find these new people that could potentially join your email list, and then we can develop them to become donors? So within Facebook, if you have a Facebook page, there's a tool called Insights. Facebook Insights gives you a look into who your page audience is, and then you can drill down into interests and discover new audiences and what did they like. Previously, there was the ability within Facebook to upload a custom audience, and we'll walk through what that means in a second. And then look at the insights for that audience. So you could take like your donor list and upload it and look into the insights for that. With the privacy issues that Facebook's had over the last year and a half or so, they've eliminated the ability to do that. And so you don't have the ability to build this custom audience anymore and get insights. You can still build a custom audience and target them with ads. You just can't look at the same kind of detail that you can with your Facebook audience. But this gives you some great insight of what the people that like your page, what they also like. And this allows you to then see, so as an example here, on this top categories. So this top categories is for the page, and you can see what other areas they like. And so for this, we could target people that follow Museum of the Bible. We can target people that follow Tony Evans or Mandisa, the musical artist. These are all similar audiences to the ones that like our page. And so Facebook Insights really gives you some good information about your audience. And then also as you drill down, you can put interests in there. So I could put in there, I want to know more about all of the followers of Mandisa. And you can layer these interests to discover more information about people and audiences that you may want to target advertising to generate new donors. All right, we're going to build a custom audience. And so when you build a custom audience, what you're doing is there's a couple of different ways to get the information into Facebook. One is, as I mentioned earlier, you can upload your donor database. And when you upload your donor database, email address or other contact information, Facebook, they call it hashing, but they take the information, they don't store it. What they do is they identify the person and then they build an audience based on that of the people that you've uploaded. This allows you to then there's two things there you can do. You can target ads to those people. So you can create a segment of your donor database, upload that list to Facebook and create ads targeting to those people. The other thing that you can do is you can build a lookalike audience, and we'll walk through that in a second. So here's some ideas on custom audiences that you could build. So I want to highlight a few. A great one is to target people that have visited your website. So these people may or may not they may not like your page yet, they may not be on your email list, but they have some at least exposure to your organization. And you can put what's called a Facebook pixel. It's a little bit of tracking code. You drop it on your website. And then Facebook will then build up an audience of people that have visited your site. What's really nice about this kind of targeting tool is that you can build an audience of people that have done some things but not others. So you could build an audience of people who have visited your website but who have not visited the thank you page on your website. And so those people have not donated. And so you could send ads to those people and display ads to them on Facebook so that you could identify people who have visited your site but who have not yet donated. And then put ads out there. If you're doing like a matching campaign, this would be a great example of a time to do that, where somebody who has not donated to your matching campaign, but they have visited your website, would be a great opportunity to target them. One of the other great things that you can do is you can target people who have watched a portion of a video on your Facebook page. And so video is one of the more engaging types of content on Facebook. And so when you post a video out there, it's going to get a better organic reach than your other organic posts, other than like a photo post or a link share. So you're going to reach a wider audience, and then when your ads are more effective because you can reach a wider audience that way. So you can put a little bit of money behind a video and build up a lot of views of the video, and then create an audience that you can go back in and target with ads to convert at a later date. So I mentioned lookalike audiences. So lookalike audiences is a fabulous tool to find people that, just as its name, that look like your audience. So you can build this based off of your Facebook page, or you can build this off of a list that you upload. So this would be a great tool to use to upload your list of donors and then create a lookalike audience of those donors. And so Facebook will go out, and it knows way too much about us, but it knows a ton of information about us and what we do. And it supplements your online activity with your offline activity. And so Facebook really knows a good deal about you. And so this tool will allow you to, if you were to use this to do this, you can upload your donor list, and then Facebook will then generate a list of millions of people that look like those people. And then in doing so, those people have a good chance of converting to like your page, to your email list, and to becoming donors, because they're very similar in their behaviors to your existing donor audience.
Jeremy, can I stop you right there for a second? I have a couple questions about this Facebook piece and the different kinds of audiences. So how costly is this kind of endeavor? So both from a staff perspective, like how involved is this process? It really sounds fantastic. I wonder how feasible it is, or where you would recommend for those who maybe have a more limited budget or a smaller staff, and they want to get into this, but they probably don't have the resources to get in as deep as some of the things that you've been talking about. What's the best, what's the piece that they can apply to their strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So creating an audience is fairly easy. What you need is basically a CSV export of your list, and it's typically just a list of email addresses. And so if you have that, then within Facebook, there's a tool where you can upload that and create an audience. So from a time investment, there isn't much time investment there. For a creating ads perspective, there are kind of wizard walkthrough functionality within there that if you're new to it, you can walk through and create an ad using more of a step-by-step process versus getting into more of the advanced tools. There are also some other tools out there that I found to be very useful. There's a tool that I'll mention later, but I can bring it up now. It's called Ad Espresso, espresso like the coffee drink. Ad Espresso is owned by Hootsuite. Fabulous tool. It's fairly inexpensive. I think it's somewhere between $50 to $100 a month, but it really breaks down the Facebook ad process and kind of the testing process for ads into a very, very, very easy to use tool. I've used it. I can use the Facebook Ad Manager. I actually prefer Ad Espresso over the Facebook Ad Manager, mainly because it automates the creation of ads to the nth degree. So you can add in as many images as you want, videos, titles, descriptions, and it'll go create all of the ads for you. So you can test multiple things, but also it's super easy to use where you just got like a 4-step process and you can create ads. So if it's a one-man shop and you want a way to really multiply yourself, something like Ad Espresso, I think is a great tool to multiply yourself and to add up for quick functionality. From a cost perspective of ads, for everything from we talked like video views up to lead generation. Video views, you're talking pennies per view if you hit a large enough audience. If you're talking lead generation, it's typically for most nonprofits, it's going to be between like $1.50 and $3 per lead. If you're more highly specialized, then you can get up into the $10 to $15 per lead range. But and that doesn't always mean bad things. $10 a lead could scare you, but if you're converting a high percentage of those over the course of as you build the funnel, then $10 lead isn't a bad thing at all. So for us, our cost of acquisition for a direct mail donor is about $46. So in the digital space, if you're getting them for $2 a lead, and then if you work out the numbers and you can convert a certain percentage point, then you can match kind of that direct mail acquisition cost. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No worries. All right, so I mentioned similar audiences to yours, so you can do some research on your own to find other nonprofits. So what we found in surveying our audience is a lot of our donors give to similar organizations. So for us, a sponsor may sponsor a child with food for the hungry, but they probably have sponsored or do sponsor with World Vision or Compassion or other similar organizations. So you could target similar organizations to your own. Facebook will give you suggestions. So when you start typing in audiences of people, then it'll suggest similar audiences to ones that you've typed in. I showed you that slide, the insights. You can see what other people like and what other people, what your audience is interested in. And then you can define that audience. So you could take and say, I want to know, what people that like a competitor, I want to know what other pages they like. And then you have a good chance of hitting similar audiences. So we've got a little homework for you. So the homework is to create a custom audience. So what you'll need for this homework is you'll need a Facebook ad account. That's the only thing you'll need. There's no cost to create a custom audience. So you'll need the Facebook ad account, and you'll need a list of people. So a list of email addresses, of phone numbers, of contact information to like a donor audience. And then you'll need the Facebook ad tool. And within there, the ad management tool, there's a tab there for custom audience. And you'll go on that and you'll upload this list, it'll process it, and then it'll create a custom audience. What we found is generally Facebook finds 60 to 80% of the people that you upload, because it's trying to match up an email address or contact information to what they already have in their database. So I imagine you'll probably find that, I've seen that across a number of other different nonprofits, typically 60 to 80%. If you have a very small list, under 500, then the chance of you building a custom audience is pretty slim, because Facebook won't allow you to build a very, very, very small custom audience, because they don't want you to target people in that kind of micro level. So you do need, I would say 1,000 or above would be a good starting point if you've got that size of audience to upload to create a custom audience. All right, we're through the audience portion of the discussion, and we're into the BRIBE section. So really, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do with your BRIBE, this lead generation asset, is trying to create something that connects the person that receives it to your cause and to what you're trying to accomplish. And so in doing that, we're going to walk through today is creating the right lead magnet. What's an idea for a BRIBE, building it, and I'm going to give you some hints on how we build ours, which is what I'm going to recommend to you to really reduce your cost to build those. And then I'm going to walk through a couple examples of other nonprofits. So here are 4 things that really make a great BRIBE. 1, it connects your donor to your cause. Second, it's easy to create. You don't want to go spend thousands of dollars to create a BRIBE to get hundreds of leads. It's just not cost effective to do that. And so my tip and my secret is you want to use resources you already have. And I'm going to show you a link. You'll be able to go to it and see, it's literally a list of all of the resources that we've created at Food for the Hungry. And we started with one. We had a 40-day devotional. And for about 2 years, all we had was one. We had a 40-day devotional. And so it took some time for us to build up some assets. But once we did, you'll see there's a lot more than just one now. But a lot of those started out as blog post series and other types of content. And then we turned them into lead generation tools. You want a high exchange value. What I mean by this is somebody has to want to give you their email address. And so there has to be enough value in this tool that you're giving them that they want to give you their email address. And then you want something that leads to a donation. We had a fabulous lead generation tool. It was about how to build a keyhole garden, which is a type of garden that we build in many of our Latin American countries. It got tens of thousands of leads through because it became very popular because people in the US wanted to build this kind of garden. And we received very few donations from it. And so it on its face, we thought it would be a great tool to connect to this audience to something that they could fund, which is these keyhole gardens. And to be honest, if people just wanted to build their own garden, it didn't connect them to what we're doing. And so you really want a BRIBE, when you build a great one, to connect someone to actually making a donation. So over on the right here, you see, and we'll walk through this example of Hillsdale College. This is a example landing page of something that really connects to the audience that they have. So here's a couple of ideas. I'm going to highlight a few of them. I'm not going to read the whole list. You can read it. But here's a couple of ideas that you could take away. Ebooks are popular, and they don't have to be very long. They can be 15 to 20 pages is a good length for an ebook. You don't want something that's too long because people won't sit down and read a 200-page ebook about a cause normally. Most people won't. And so ebooks are great. Audience surveys are wonderful tools, especially around gathering information for other areas of your ministry. And so we use surveys and we ask people about planned giving topics, about does your church have interest in this area? We ask them what areas they're interested in so we can segment them so we can send them appeals later. So we ask them, are you interested in children and clean water and in disaster funding? So surveying is a great tool. Petitions and advocacy toolkits are wonderful because people, if they're willing to advocate politically for a cause, then they're very highly likely to give to a cause. Those are great tools. And then you may have said to you or heard people give to people. And so things like webinars or teleconference with your president or people of interest in your industry, those are really great tools for lead generation, because people really want to hear from people that do the work. So those are fabulous lead generation. Set up like a webinar like this, ask people for their name and email address, then you schedule the webinar, and then you have an opportunity then to target those people on email. So as I mentioned earlier, fh.org/resources, you can go there and see examples of what we've created. Free to download those. Some of them are free with no email address needed. I can just click the link, and some of those you'll see take you to a form, and you can see some of the landing pages that we've created. Are there any questions on this topic before we move on this particular, just the idea side?
I would just say, from my own experience, I'm constantly looking for some expertise, some resources to help folks, and this really works. I'm not sure how many different groups have gotten my email out there, because ebooks, insiders groups, additional value items, they really are a great tool to get people into the organization. So I do think this is really worth all of those that are engaged listening today to really evaluate this list and determine, hey, which of these things might we be able to offer as a lead generator. So I think that's a really great list, Jeremy. Thank you.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, a lot of these things, when you go and look at examples that we've posted, a lot of these things started out as blog series, content that we may have actually used in fundraising, where we gathered a story, and ended up saying, this is a great story, let's put this together with some other things. A lot of things that we've built have really started other pieces, and all we've done is compiled them. So it's just taken the time of somebody to put them together and put them into a PDF, maybe design a cover page, which you could do inexpensively, freelance if you don't have a designer on staff. But assembling these things doesn't take as much money as you might consider when you go to that resources page. That's been about 5 years of building assets when you go to that page. So please don't look at that and go, I have to have all of these things. You really don't. As I mentioned, we had a 40-day devotional. We used that internally and externally with partners. We used BeliefNet and Salem for a long time, acquiring leads from them using that one tool, and it worked out really well. So here's a couple of examples. Dr. David Jeremiah, he does a lot of ebooks and a lot of free video courses and things like that to generate leads. Here's a survey from Crew that they've used. Two other examples. The one on the left is from Proverbs 31 Ministries. The one on the right is from an organization that does more health-related things. So you can see it's really congruent to the cause of the organization. So Hidden Joy in a Dark Corner is a book. So this is a Bible study based around that book, and this is Proverbs 31, which does that kind of thing. And then the one on the right is very congruent to this health ministry. So that's very important because, as I mentioned, you don't want to give away an iPad, because if you give away an iPad, then you're going to get a lot of people. You'll get a lot of really cheap leads, but a lot of them, they're not going to convert. So your take action, your homework is to outline your lead magnet. So go look at those assets that you've already created. Maybe you've got a blog series. Maybe you had built a podcast over the years. We had one, Poverty Unlocked was a podcast series that we had years ago. We packaged up it kind of in a course format and turned that into a lead generation asset. So you might have these things that already exist that you just need to package them in a different way and expose them to your audience, and you'll have your tool right there, and it won't take you very long to do it. So now we're going to talk about how do you capture that lead. So this is getting into more of the technical side of things, and I don't want you to tune out at this point because, as I mentioned, there are tools out there. Facebook's over the years made their ad tool really much easier to use than it might have been a few years ago. And then there's tools like Ad Espresso, which is now owned by Hootsuite, and it's a great tool for being able to create ads. And I believe it actually works with AdWords now too, so you could consolidate a lot of your digital ads into one platform. I mentioned earlier, you don't need 1 million new fans. I've worked with some organizations and talked to a lot of organizations over the years, and when they've thrown goals out there like, we need to have 1 million fans by this date. I say, please don't. Like, you don't need to waste your money on that, because you're going to end up with a lot of fans that won't be engaged with what you're doing. And at the end of the day, you know, your goal isn't to build a huge fan base. Your goal is to build new donors, because in building new donors, you're helping people capture that joy of donating and connecting them with somebody that they can help. And so a fan doesn't do that, a donor does. And so as we walk through this capture process, here's the steps that we're gonna talk through that you'll need to do as a part of building this capture stream. You need a landing page. There's also what's called lead ads. Lead ads actually live within the social media platform, and so you don't need a landing page for them to go to. You just need to set them up with the lead ad, and then that can dump right into your email service provider. You need an enticing ad. This is one of the areas that I think you know, a lot of us can struggle in, which is to create that ad that actually gets people to click. I'll walk through a high level of how you structure ad campaigns. I would recommend using a tool like Ad Espresso for testing variations. And then you'll need something that integrates into your email service provider. And then here I mentioned at the end about Ad Espresso, again, using that ad management platform. So a landing page, there's a number of tools out there. If you don't have an easy way to create landing pages yourself, using your own website or have somebody on staff that can do it, there's a couple of tools out there. One that I used for a long time. So when I joined Food for the Hungry, up until about 2 years ago, we had a very unfriendly to use content management system. So you can get big without actually having the best tools in place. It is possible. We put WordPress in place about 2 years ago, and it's been a fabulous tool. And we use HubSpot in conjunction with that, which has some great lead forms in it. But up until that point, I was using Unbounce, which is a fairly inexpensive tool. It's very easy to use, very powerful to use, though it's very easy to use, and allows you to create really good looking landing pages. They've got a lot of free templates in there that you can just literally just drop in, change the colors to match your colors, throw your logo in there, and build these really excellent looking landing pages. Lead Pages is another one that's similar. There's a number of tools out there that are kind of in this $100 a month or a little bit less or a little bit more range of money, but you know, the longer term view of things, you know, $100 a month is a heck of a lot less than hiring a developer to go build you these landing pages all the time. So I highly recommend that you use a tool if you don't have already something built into your email service provider, like a HubSpot does, that would allow you to speed up the process and not continually be outsourcing and sending to developers whenever you need something built. So a couple things to mention on here. You want to make sure that you know the source of how people are coming in. And so as you capture leads coming in, make sure you track. You can do these within really almost any form that you build. So HubSpot would do this, Unbounce would do this, even if you built your own forms on your website. You want to track where people are coming from so that later you can go back and figure out you know, where people actually donated from. It's really important as you build these campaigns, if you're going to spend any kind of money long-term, that you know the value of the source so that you can go back to it, especially if you're buying ads on Facebook and then buying from, you know, partnering with other organizations like a BeliefNet or a Salem or any of those kind of websites where you can go get leads, that you are tracking the source for attribution later. Any questions on this before we move on? So here's a great example of a landing page. My guess is, and I could be wrong, but my guess is that Hillsdale is using somebody like an Unbounce to build this kind of page. So here's a couple of things I'll point out on this. Minimal navigation. You don't want people to be able to click off and go to other places on your site. So you don't want your normal menus up there because your effective investment will go up because you'll get less leads because people will get distracted. They'll go to your about page, they'll go somewhere else. They won't remember where they were and they won't go back. And so you'll end up losing them even though they may be interested in signing up when they hit the page. There's some congruency offer in this for Hillsdale's audience, as you can see there. One of the more important things to do. People value time, and so setting some clear expectations. If it's a single form, then you may not need to do this. It can be, there may not need to be this kind of bar, but with this is a two-step process. There's 2 pages you have to go through here. So setting that clear expectation of there's only 2 steps. A really good call to action, and you'll want to test your call to action. There could be significant difference between like a subscribe or an activate my course. I know the agency that works with Hillsdale, so I know that this has probably been tested ad nauseum. So activate my course was probably the best converting of probably dozens of different phrases that they've used over the time that this landing page has been live. The other thing they do really excellent on this page is this social proof box. So this is other people that have taken this free course and what they say. And then this is the thank you page from that same process. So they thank you. They send you an email as well, but then at the bottom, so this is all one page, but you can see on my slide here, over to the right is your donation. So it's credit card information, and then below that was address information. And they actually already filled in the information that I completed on the previous forms on the contact form that was below this donation form. But this is an example of a good thank you page where they thank you for subscribing, but then they also ask for that donation right then, because there is a good portion, typically 10 to 20% of the audience that fills out that form for lead gen will go ahead and convert as a donor right there. And so you want to take advantage of that audience that's going to convert as a donor right there and go ahead and ask them on the thank you page. So we mentioned earlier, within Facebook, I just want to mention this, that this can get confusing for people as they set up the ads, but there's 3 levels within Facebook. There's the ad campaign level, and within the ad campaign, you can have multiple ad sets, and then within ad sets, you can have multiple ads. And so as you go through and build out your ad campaigns, you could do 1-1-1, so you could have one ad campaign with one ad set with one ad, or you can build multiples of these within your ad campaigns. And so just wanted to highlight this so that it's a little bit less confusing seeing it like this. Where this comes into play is an ad campaign might be that Hillsdale College page probably has one ad campaign leading to it. They may have multiple sets of ads for testing purposes. And then they may within the sets, so the sets is where you're targeting your audience at. And then within that set, then you might have multiple ads that you're testing. So you might be testing like the headline of the ad or the image or the body copy or even the call to action within the ad. But when you think about it, just know that you have the campaign, the ad set, and then the ads. Here's a 4-step process for creating an enticing ad. So the first thing you want to do is, if you think about your action on when you're scrolling through Facebook or Instagram, you're kind of doing this, scrolling, and something catches your attention, you stop, you take a look at it, and then you do this again. And so you only have a few seconds to catch someone's attention. And so you want to make sure that your headline and the image that you're using or video that you're using really captures that attention of somebody as they scroll. And the majority of users are on their mobile devices. So you want to capture that attention as they scroll on their mobile device. You want to tell a story that motivates people. So this is very similar to what you're doing when you're doing fundraising appeals. You want to tell a story that motivates someone to click. So if you're leading to a Bible study, you want to paint the picture of what's that person's life like after they take this Bible study. Be clear in what you're offering. Are you offering a free ebook download? Are you offering a free course? You don't want to surprise people, because what you'll see is people, if it's unclear, they'll click through the landing page and then they'll abandon on the landing page because they were unclear about the offer that you were making. And then you need a strong call to action. So this could be download, this could be subscribe, it could be a number of different things, but you want to make sure that your call to action really fits what you're providing to the audience. So I'm going to take a little quiz here. So I want you guys to tell me which one of these images do you think performed better for an ebook that was teaching Christians social media values? You can just vote in the chat. Couple votes coming in. All right. So here we see the first one, $2.50 per lead, all the way down to $1.87 per lead, and the last one. So the important lesson here is to test everything. You don't know which image is going to perform best. You don't know which headline is going to perform best. And I've already mentioned it before. I should make a commission off of Ad Espresso at this point because I've mentioned their name before. But for testing, fabulous tool. I highly recommend it. And then with that, as I mentioned earlier, that tool allows you to then build out ads and test those. Yeah, it's just a fabulous way to quickly test things. So developing a lead is similar to how we develop any kind of new donor coming on file, which is you got to quit asking people to marry you on the first date. You know, putting out an ad for a donation request to a cold audience won't work very well for you. And so what we want to do is we want to develop these people that have subscribed to become donors. And how we do that is our goal is, in this case, to develop a donor. It could be something different. So you could, you could be setting up an ad campaign to target existing major donors who you don't have an email address for, but you do have contact information for. And so you start running ads within social media to people that match that contact information in order to try to get their email address. So it might be just a conversion opportunity to get their email address and to convert that donor to a second donor. You've got a couple of different ways that you can develop. The first is a welcome series. So this is the first, usually 3 to 4 part email series that you use to welcome someone to your list. You have an engagement series, which again, a couple of emails after your welcome series, and that really builds engagement with the audience. And there's no ask in that engagement series. This is just building people up to learn more about the organization, about the cause, about the people that you help, so success stories. You want to nurture that lead. So you want to give more value to them than you're asking from them. So use some of these other assets. So if you build a devotional, then you might later give away a free course to that same list of something to that devotion you build. So nurture into that audience the things that you've been building, the assets, the tools, so that they feel there's value coming from you. And then you want to be able to measure your results at the end. So I mentioned earlier, you want to source your leads so you know where they're coming from, because later you want to measure the impact of what you're doing. So what is our goal? So there's a couple of goals here. I'll highlight if you want to convert a lead to donor. Obviously, we've been talking quite a bit about that. You can also use this process to reactivate a lapsed donor. So you might build a custom audience of lapsed donors, show them some videos from the organization of impact reporting of good work that you've done, and then lead those people down a series to reactivate that donor. You might just use this as a reinforcement tool for your relationships with mid or major donors. Social media is a great tool, and there's been a number of studies. Next After has done some really good work on studying just sending brand videos to people and then appealing to them in different channels, and you see this lift of donation, both in total amount given and in number of donations given when you send brand videos or brand exposure out to people with no ask at all in them. You see a lift in other channels. So great tool to use for that. You might use this process to recruit volunteers for your organization. So once we've captured that lead and they're in our database, then we want this welcome series. So our welcome series at FH, we have a number of them based on how you came into the organization. If you came in as a donor in a specific type of event, as an example, then you'd get one welcome series. If you came in as a lead from a particular tool, a particular lead asset, then you would get a completely different welcome series. But kind of a 3-step process, if you think about it. You want to welcome people to the list and thank them profusely in this first email. You really want them to feel this gratitude. You want to provide them a link to the asset that you're providing. The second email in the series, you really want to build relationship and show them impact of what the organization is doing and connect them to the cause. And then the third one, that's where we continue to show this impact, and then we ask for that donation. And so we use this 3-part series. We did the same for our donors because studies have shown that if you don't get that second donation in the first 90 days, you're not likely to. So when we get that first donation in the door, then we're working on getting that second donation. And we use our email welcome series in order to do that. So your engagement series. So this is after your welcome series, you put them into an engagement series. So again, we're thanking them for joining the list. We're personalizing the things that we're offering them. So if they're doing a devotional, they downloaded a 40-day devotional, 3 or 4 weeks into the devotional, we'll probably ask them questions about the point at which they should be in the devotional to remind them that they downloaded this, and then to re-engage them at the point at which they're in the devotional. At the end of that 40-day devotional, we're sending them another email to talk about that devotional and the next steps of other tools that are similar that they could be downloading. So you want to offer things that are related to them. There's some really good shown practice around reciprocity, where when people feel like you're investing in them, then they feel like they want to give back. And so they want to be, they want to give back by donating when you ask, because you've been spending all this time and giving them all these resources. And then finally here, we want to measure our results. So engagement within the ads themselves, you're going to be really measuring how engaged people are with your ads. We want to measure the engagement of the emails once they join. And so if you find, we had a 3-part welcome series, and part 2, we had a ton of people unsubscribing, and we were trying to figure out what was going on. And what we noticed was the messaging really dipped and had some, it was a great story, we thought, but had some negative elements at the beginning, and we changed out that story and the engagement numbers went back up. So you want to measure those, and then you get down to measuring the conversions and, again, the source that they came from. And now that you've done that, you've acquired a new donor. So next steps after this, you want to, of course, thank the donor, and you want to build a series of gratitude and impact reporting for those donors. That's outside this process, but something that highly recommend you do to show the donor in the future what you've done with their donation. It much improves the chance of getting to that second donation. So now we have a few minutes for some questions. So go ahead and type those in, and we'll get some questions here. And
well, Jeremy, you warned us it might be a fire hose. I feel like that was a little bit more like a tsunami. That was a lot of great information. I'm sure there are questions, but in the meantime, I think one thing, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit while we wait to see if anybody engages with a question. I've not used the practice of the engagement series separate from the welcome series. A lot of times I think there was, at least in my experience, what we did was kind of a welcome series, and then after that was done, then they just kind of got into the regular email chain of command, so to speak. And so I think that's a really good mid-step that you mentioned. Is this something that you've always done? Has this been a relatively new practice for you guys? Tell us a little more about how that came about.
It's fairly new. It's probably about 2 or 3 years old, probably 2 years old, maybe. I lose track of time sometimes on how fast things move. So the difference being, when we have someone in a welcome series, they're not receiving any other email communication from us at all. The engagement series runs simultaneously with them getting pushed into the other pool of emails. And so and the intent there, so let's say that your welcome series is 3 weeks long. So in week 4, they could get pushed into a normal stream of email communications that they might receive from us. And so in off times during that stream, hopefully it's off times. I mean, it's based on when they join the list, but they'll receive these other emails that are still congruent and still related to the offer of how they came in. And so they feel this transition then from this welcome series. They're starting to see appeals, but then this engagement series is still painting this real gratitude picture and this impact picture for them. So they still feel like you're investing in that relationship and you're not just immediately asking them for money.
Yeah. So I think I've heard you speak on this before, but I'm not sure I heard it today. So is there, relative to this welcome series, engagement series, regular emails that are happening organizationally, I know some of us are thinking, aren't they going to just check out? When is there a danger of over communicating with donors? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that I think will have a surprising answer for a lot of people. I think most of us, because we see all of the communications that we're sending out, we think that we're over sending to people. And in reality, we're really not. You know, there's one organization that I spoke to when I was describing our emails and how many we send a month. And really it's, you know, pretty much like we send an impact email every Saturday. We send an appeal a month and sometimes two. And then there's, you know, gratitude emails and things like that that just go out to people that have given to the cause, or impact emails. But those are smaller audiences. This organization that I spoke to, they sent 3 a week. And they weren't seeing any drop off in their audience. In fact, he said he was advising me that we would see better engagement by sending more. And his advice was 3 a week. Now, we haven't done that. But generally, I think if you think about your email inbox and what you receive, you know, you're getting probably an email a day from Amazon, maybe more. I get probably 3 or 4 emails a day from Amazon, no joke. I get them from Whole Foods. I get them from, you know, other even Amazon affiliated, you know, entities. People are more forgiving and more interested in what you're sending than you think they are. The other thing is, you know, there's going to be groups of people that just aren't engaged, and they're going to be, you know, there's going to be kind of these lurkers that really never engage, that just read your stuff. There's going to be people who are not engaged at all, and they never even open your emails. They may not see them. They might get sent to a promotional tab. And then there's going to be people that do open an occasional email. There's very few people that are opening every email that you're sending them. So when you think about it and you see this messaging and you're like, oh my gosh, we're so repetitive in this. You're repetitive because you're seeing all your tests and you're seeing all your emails. The people that are reading it, they might see 1 a quarter. And so you're not really being that repetitive to them. So my advice is, you know, I've worked with a lot of organizations that send 1 email a month or 1 every 2 months. That's too few. You need to be more in their inbox, because the other portion of it is that when they're ready to give, which you don't always know when they are, you want to be top of mind for them. You want to be one of their top 3 charities. And if you're only in their inbox every quarter, then you're never going to be top of mind for them.
Yeah. So is there any data that says there is sort of that tipping point of people are going to stop giving because I'm over communicating? Is there any data that proves that out?
We're running a test right now at Food for the Hungry with our monthly donors. And so I will have some data. It's going to be a year-long test. So we'll have some data that we're running. We took pools of 5,000 and 5,000, and we're testing those pools against each other. And we're cutting out almost, for these are monthly donors, almost all the asks out of this group entirely. And then keeping our normal stream here, which includes, you know, impact emails and things that are not asking them for money. And so I would imagine that there are some organizations, I don't know of any large studies of where the tipping point is. We'll have some data very soon of where that tipping, of not where the tipping point is, but how it impacts monthly donors. I think it would be an interesting study to see how it would impact like a general donor file. But I don't know of any studies, and we've not, you know, our renewal rates are pretty high at FH. And so we don't see, even among general donors, our renewal rates are like 78%. And so we don't see that drop off within our general donors, and we hit them, as I mentioned, you know, a couple emails a month, and we're not seeing, where you would probably see it too is in your unsubscribe rate, and we don't see anything out of the norm in our unsubscribe rates.
Yeah. Good information, good data. I think a big takeaway for me was this testing idea, whether it's like you're talking about right now in an email series or ads. That's really interesting. Call to action. There's just all kinds of opportunities to test and see what works with your particular audience. I don't see any questions, Jeremy, and we're getting up against that 1 hour mark. Is there anything else you want to share kind of as a kind of ending thought? Anything that you want to make sure they take away?
Yeah, I would say that there was a lot today that I shared, but know that this was developed for many years. And so my advice to you is, if you're a one-man shop, or if you're just starting out, or if you just have $100 a month, that's okay. And take your $100 a month and, you know, break things down to the simplest level you can. One ad, one landing page, one asset. You know, you don't have to start with 10 different things, and you don't have to have it perfect to figure it out. Take what you have and do that, and getting those leads on file now, you'll be happy a year from now when you started, versus if you didn't and you were trying to wait for everything to be perfect. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeremy, and I think that's excellent parting advice, is don't be overwhelmed. It was a fire hose. Find one thing as you look back through your notes, and I'll certainly challenge you in a kind of wrap-up email, those of you who have engaged today, with some just maybe takeaway points that maybe you can consider. And like Jeremy said, change one thing or add one aspect of what he talked about. Don't try to do it all at once. And let's slowly kind of see some more engagement, more acquisition, and that's really the objective. So thank you again, Jeremy. All of my friends who have engaged today, thank you for being with us. Tune in next month in August. We're going to talk with Scott Ahern from Masterworks. He is going to share with us some tips on Giving Tuesday, because believe it or not, the fall will be here soon, and certainly want to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row for year-end planning. And then Mike Myers will be with us in September to talk about mid-level givers, and then we're going to talk about those monthly recurring givers in October. So we have lots of great information for you over the coming months. Just tune in for this hour, share this information with a friend, and I think you'll get some really valuable takeaways that can really lift your development programs. And that's our objective here. As Jeremy said, to raise more money to help more people, and that's what we want to help you do as well. So what you learned today, tell somebody in your office before you leave today what your takeaway was, what you're going to go work on. There's good accountability in sharing that with someone, and so I'd encourage you to do that. Take a look at the email that I send tomorrow, and you can replay today's webinar and maybe fill in the blanks. I know some of you were probably taking notes furiously. So thanks again to Jeremy for sharing. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and God bless your efforts. Goodbye.